Hello, welcome to Chapter 15, Business Math, called Sales. This is lesson 15.4 called Net Profit Rate. Uh, Make sure, as always, you are reading through. I don't know why my nose is always so itchy in these recordings. All right, make sure you're reading through the chapter, look through the lesson, pay attention to the examples they give you. How are they using the formulas? What key concepts are there? Terminology and vocab terminology, same thing. Pay attention to what we're doing, not just how to do it, but what are we doing. It's important as we go through these sections that you're paying attention to what it is we're actually doing, what it means, because moving through the chapters, it does get more difficult, or not necessarily difficult, but more what I like to call involved. They're using concepts from previous sections. And if you don't understand what you're doing, you're going to get to a point where you don't know what they're asking you to do. So pay attention to what it is we're actually doing. What does it mean? All right. So that being said, let's go ahead and read the little summary they give us up here at the top. So we have the net profit rate of an item a business sells is the net profit expressed as a percent of the selling price of the item. The formula is, and here they give us a little formula, net profit rate equals net profit divided by the selling price. So pretty easy calculation there for the most part. They do want us to complete this table and round our answers to the nearest tenth of a percent. So part of this table requires us to understand the overhead calculation from the previous sections. So the overhead calculation is literally just the selling price times the overhead, and that will give you the overhead amount, how much it actually costs, not just the percentage of what it costs, but how much it actually costs to keep that item in stock in the store. The profit is just the overhead minus the markup. So remember, markup, and this is another one from previous section, markup is how much they're marking it up, how much more the item is from what they bought it for. So if they bought the item for a lower amount, in this case, they bought it for $1.30 less than what they're selling it for, that's the markup. So they're making $1.30 when we purchase these batteries. And then we're going to subtract the overhead from that because it's extra costs for keeping those batteries in stock. That tells us our net profit. So again, this is a process from the previous section. The first part of this table up until this point, we've already done this in previous sections. They're just kind of reviewing how to get to this net profit amount. Okay. The piece that's new is the net profit rate. So once we have the net profit, we divide that by the selling price, and that gives us our net profit rate. Make sure you express this as a percentage, not a decimal. They're definitely looking for a percentage here. Whenever you see the word rate or percentage, that's what we want to see, a percentage there. It means a little bit more generally when you're looking at a percentage than it does a decimal. Even though they mean the same thing, visually they kind of mean something a little different usually when we look at them. All right, I don't think I'm going to go through and actually make the calculations on this table because we've done this same table before in the other sections. I believe this was actually section 3. Yes. So section 3, we did 2 of these tables. So if you need a little bit more help going through the first part of this table, go back to section 3 and watch that video. And then I would hope maybe go through and complete that worksheet as well so that you get points for that one and you get credit for doing it. And then come back to this one so that you can do that. So let's go ahead and look down below here. We're going to have to do the same thing for every single one of these. You're going to have to calculate the markup for, it looks like for every single one, you're going to have to calculate a markup for it. And then you're going to have to calculate the overhead, the actual overhead cost, not the overhead percent. They give you the overhead percent in each one of these. And then you're going to need your net profit so that you can divide that by your selling price. So you're going to have to do the exact same thing that we're doing here, except they calculated the markup for you here. So down here, let's go ahead and read number 7. The Springer clothing store buys men's suits for $144.20. The selling price is $299.99. Approximately 32.5% of the selling price pays for the overhead. Again, my nose is super itchy during these videos. What is the net profit rate? So the overhead is going to be the selling price minus the cost. That'll tell us what the I think I just said overheads, right? The markup is the selling price minus the cost. That tells us how much they marked it up for. And then we're going to take the selling price and multiply by the overhead percentage. So the selling price times 32.5%. That will give us our overhead cost. And then we simply just need to subtract our markup from our overhead so that we know how much we're actually making. Remember, markup is how much we made on the item, but we have the overhead costs. Those are extra costs, not necessarily the cost of buying the item, but other costs such as storage, employees, things like that. That they're extra costs that we can't necessarily just subtract when we buy the item as part of the cost. We subtract it as overhead. And so we subtract those two amounts so we know the actual net profit. Then we can divide that by the selling price to get our percentage. So each one is going to have at least 3 calculations here. Find the markup, find the overhead, subtract those two, and then divide by your selling price. So it goes through basically this table a little bit more advanced because they're making you do this markup as well. So each one goes through the same process. So I don't think I'm going to go through each one of these. I'm going to jump down here to number 12, which is the algebra problem. So Mayflowers sells decorative flower vases at a net profit rate of 35%. The markup is $42.95 and the overhead is $18.95. Find the net profit and the selling price. So net profit is pretty darn easy. Net profit is just the markup minus the overhead. We already have that. We have the markup and we have the overhead. They told us that. All we have to do is subtract these two numbers. So pretty darn easy on this one. And like I've said in many, many other videos, algebra, just because it's labeled algebra does not mean it's going to be more difficult. It just means that we need to stop and think about it. What have we learned? How do we apply that to the situation? Usually you're missing something. So a lot of the time before this problem, you're given all the pieces, you multiply for a total. And in the algebra portion, most of the time they're going to give us a total and ask us to find a piece. So it's just kind of a little bit backwards usually in the algebra. But it doesn't mean it's more difficult, it just means think about it. That's all they want you to do here. Okay, so pretty easy first calculation there to get our net profit. And then the selling price, we just need to take our, let's see, our net profit, and we're going to divide that by, so I was going to scooch up here, but I don't need to scooch up here. I'll just stay down here. So, and I'm not giving you this total. So this is that same box here. And we're going to divide this by the selling price. And the reason I'm doing this is I'm using that formula up above for calculating the net profit rate. So here, I'll scooch up for a minute. That's what I was going to show you. But I kind of went against it. So net profit rate equals net profit divided by selling price. So I'm using this formula kind of backwards to get the piece that I need. I already have the net profit rate. I will have the net profit as soon as I finish that calculation. I just have to put it here. I don't have the selling price. So that's the piece I'm missing. So once I get this set up, I can multiply. And instead of saying selling, I'm just going to say S here. I'm going to multiply by S on both sides so that it moves out from underneath. And I end up with my net profit. Again, I'm not filling that in for you. I'm just bringing the box over. Equals 35% times S. So once I have this box filled in, remember this box is the same. I'm just scooching it around. All I have to do is divide by 35, and that will tell me what my selling price is. So it's using what we have to figure out some missing piece. So in this case, we're missing the selling price, and we already have the net profit rate. So, all right, I hope that helped, and I will see you in section 5.